It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Freeman Michaels here with my co-host, Barnet Bain. Barnet.
Good morning.
This is the first time we've ever done this, I want to answer some mail.
Wow.
So we got a message from someone in regards to...
Your Christmas list?
No, in regards to a show about the Awakened Dreamer, where we're talking about the Hall of Mirrors and how it's all reflecting back to us, something that when we own it, we become empowered.
We are in a what we call a psychodynamic reality, and we are moving through a map of our own subconscious.
Right. So the question from Red Sky in the Afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Red Sky in the Afternoon asks, how can a child going through deep suffering, physical and or emotional, be walking through a hall of mirrors? How? I answered that, by the way, but I'm going to let you answer first.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I understand where I understand, at least from the way you read the question, I have a sense of where the questioner was coming from. A child, no less than an adult, is still moving through. The Hall of Mirrors is our euphemism for the outer world, which is reflecting back. It's like the holodeck in Star Trek. It's reflecting back our beliefs and our thoughts and our choices and our decisions and our attitudes and our feelings, all at the level of what we're holding subconsciously and unconsciously. And so we're moving through this dream-like experience and thinking we're separate from it, that we're not generating it. So a child is likewise is projecting a map of what is moving, what is working through their subconscious, unconscious. We do it two ways. We do it consciously, by conscious choosing, and we do it by allowing. And the allowing part, particularly for children receive as programming the beliefs and the thoughts.
That's it.
And the assumptions of their parents and of their communities and their entertainment and their religions and their schools and their friends and the media and the values. And each one of these things is almost like a wave, and each one of them hits another wave and then backs off and folds in on itself and crashes into another wave. And in very, very short order, it becomes a map of such intricate complexity. It's so powerful. And then we wander through that and think that it is outside of us. It's still a hall of mirrors. Eventually, human beings, we develop in terms of our own capacity to, and our own maturity, our own ability to understand and to grow. Eventually the light goes on and says, well, maybe I can use some of the experiences in the world, what I perceive to be the world at large, to empower myself to make different kinds of choices. So maybe I look into the mirror and I see something in there that allows me to shift in a fundamental way how I hold things. But when I say a fundamental way, I'm not talking about the surface of things. I'm talking about when we look so deeply into the mirror that we can see at what point I either acquiesced to this particular belief system or that I chose it. At what point did I feel so disempowered, maybe as an infant, or so helpless, that at what point did I feel the world is so big and I'm so small and scary things happen that make me feel helpless? A whole life could be built on that.
Yeah.
Likewise, the reverse is true. A whole life could be built on the world that looks like such a treasure trove. And there are so many things that are going on that support that perspective, and that I live a life as a child without knowing why or how, that mirrors back the part of me that is very comfortable with living in a bountiful and loving world. And we know those kinds of people too. So
yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I said that, you know, as a child, the dream feels less lucid. I mean, it's interesting.
It feels more like a dream.
Yeah, there's a bit of a contradiction to this, even as I'm speaking it. But let me just say that a lot of what there's this notion of an inheritance, almost like there's a frequency that is my. It's something that I inherited, that is the energetics and so forth of my family of origin, of my tribe.
This is true.
And to the degree I, even early on, begin to have experiences outside of that framework, and I recognize that my choices influence my experiences even within that framework, I become the potential for me to become more of the creator or the generator. I already am, but I'm not doing it consciously. I'm doing it unconsciously.
As a child, we, as you say, we are exposed to a certain, let's use the metaphor of bandwidth on a radio,
right?
Of a certain bandwidth of possibility and emotional states and willingness to be authentic and to feel emotions as they arise and to release them instantly. We are exposed to this, and sometimes we're exposed to it to greater or lesser capacity, and it changes, it recalibrates how we view the world, and our world begins to conform to how we have it calibrated. So if I am exposed to a world early that where people are quick to express their emotions and to feel helpless, or to try and feel empowered by being aggressive with their emotions, then that begins to become my model for the world.
That's right.
And I respond to that either by emulating it or by reacting to it. But at the bottom of it, I have made certain fundamental choices about the world as a result of my exposure to that, and it rules out all kinds of other experiences.
It's interesting, is I have a friend who, by all rights, came from a very traumatic childhood experience. And what's interesting is this friend of mine says that this individual knew the whole time that had an observer, a sense of separation. And they say, often I knew what to do in my life or what I wanted by not doing what my parents were doing. Not as a reaction, but a sense that this isn't right. And she says, I always knew that I wasn't going to be that. Almost as if that the sort of joke of, I think the wrong people took me home from the hospital. She said, I always felt like I'm in the wrong family. This isn't where I belong. And subsequently, her life is quite remarkable, especially in lieu of her family of origin and what possibilities you might imagine. And well, we all know these people.
We all do.
These people who
we all are those people.
Well, that's the issue. Yes.
I mean, it's not to say
yes.
So hopefully, none of our listeners are going to come back and are going to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that parents are bad or parents are wrong, or that I was a bad dad. I'm not saying I did my best, and my parents did their best. Most people's parents do their best. So I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that our values and our assumptions, our beliefs, our central modeling of our imaginative capacity is a result of what we are exposed to in the family, in our education, in our entertainment, in our values, in our culture. This is what models who we become. And whether that is powerful and beautiful and good and true, or whether it is victim-y and weak and good and true, in either case, at some point, neither of them, it comes to the realization that neither of them is a handcrafted life.
Right.
Even if my parents love me perfectly, and the whole of my schooling and my education and my religious tradition and everything I experience is perfectly supportive, I may be so happy and fulfilled, but I still would not have found my unique expression of it. At some point, I would say, this is all beautiful and good. I'm not saying we need to abandon it. I'm saying, but on the shoulders of that, what is it about my existence that is uniquely mine? And the irony is that sometimes it's easier to find when life has been a little harder and a little messier, because it's like looking for a target, and if you have a big old barn door with a huge target, it says, my life really has been hard. Right. It's a lot easier to find. And we all know people, I certainly have friends who have had such sublime lives that it is very difficult for them to find the knothole.
Yeah, but everyone has that sort of, forgive the expression, dark night of the soul, but that moment where they come to terms with how much of me is in the life that I'm living, how much of this is uniquely chosen by me. What we're talking about as an expansion of consciousness is we come to the understanding that it all is. And at that moment in time, there's a fundamental shift in how we view our experience and how we view the world around us. Yeah. And that really is the answer to the question. I mean, the idea that that we are that something is happening to us and that it's not in our control, and that may very well be how it felt, but the idea that consciousness is the ability to see that dimensionally and assign meaning to it,
and that's a developmental maturity that requires a great seasoning, and we are just in the 14 billion years of the linear story, of the straight line story. We have come to this particular time and place that so many are calling the shift in the culture today, of expanding to the knowledge that I am more than the sum total of my parts. That of us, I'm not just a snowball accumulating girth as I roll down the hill. That after 14 billion years of accumulating girth, I suddenly realize there's a phase shift.
Yeah, that's right.
That I am not so much the result of the past, as our mutual friend says, I am the product of a future. That has always been the case, but it has been set against the backdrop of the past, so we've thrown it into the future. I'm going a little left and right here.
No, you're not. I mean, I think, the extension of this to where there are potentialities that all exist and our ability to choose them. And it isn't a doing process, it's an allowing. I mean, we've talked about it. We just, in fact,
some of it's a doing and some of it's an allowing.
No, what I'm talking about, the show, actually, this person was referring to is the show where we talked about it in terms of frequency, in terms of a field that we're opening to, that exists, that we simply live into as we evolve, that then becomes the choice more and more of what we're generating.
High magic.
High magic.
Where high magic is a magic that shifts matter in conformity with my desire and will as a function of choice. Now, we probably lost a bunch of people here. We're going to get some mail now.
We'll get more questions. We'll be doing mail every week.
But we are operating, suffice to say, there are many answers to these questions, and a few of them we have, and many more of them we don't have the answers to the same questions. But and they're all per where we are in terms of our own unique process. So, for a child to be wandering in a hall of mirrors, it's very, very scary. For a child to be asleep in her bed and having a nightmare, that child inside the nightmare, inside that little kind of skin-encapsulated avatar that represents that little child running through the nightmare being chased by somebody, is terrifying. And when the child wakes up terrified, and her mom and her dad rocks her gently and soothes her gently and says it was all a dream, she can take some comfort in that, and yet there is another part of her that may not be potentiated yet, that is making connections, that says, well, if all that was a dream, then I also dreamed the pursuers, and I also dreamed the hard Scrabble path beneath my feet. I dreamed the shoes that were too tight. I dreamed the branch that whipped me in the face. I dreamed the whole thing. It wasn't just me if I dreamed that whole thing. And in that way, that dream is a hall of mirrors. It might have been something psychological. It might have been the bad piece of fish you ate before you went to bed. But it is a hall of what is going on at the subconscious. And likewise, as we move through the dream state we call real world, it is becoming increasingly apparent that that is also psychodynamic.
Yeah.
And that we can put on lights and tell ourselves the truth. We can console ourselves. It's all a dream. Barnet, relax. It's okay. It's a dream.
That's fantastic. That's fantastically put, and I think we covered it. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
That's what happens when you ask questions here. It runs through the whole 20 minutes.
That's it. But we invite you, of course, to share this if you enjoy it and to keep coming back. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
To Cutting Edge Consciousness.